Baruch Hashem. Today's daf yomi is Menachos daf Yud Aleph. Menachos 11 will start Ezra Hashem Yisbarach on the bottom line of 10b, the last line. The Mishnah had said that if you did the kamitza v'ala biyado, while you did the kamitza, you got up in your hand a tzaror, a pebble, or gargar melach, a kernel of salt, or a lavona, or some frankincense, a little part of frankincense, then it's going to be disqualified because Rashi says because the kometz is missing that space, and so then Rashi asks the question: if you're going to say how did you do the kamitz at all, the lavona is over the entire mincha because it says kol avona shal mincha. So we say the answer is that when you do the kometz, you move the entire lavona to one side. So Rashi says even though the lavona has to be over the whole mincha, nevertheless you move the lavona to one side when you do the kamitza. So now the Gemara says kol hani lamali. Why do we need all of these examples? We just know that if the comment is chaser, it's no good. If the comment is missing, so the Gemara says the reason why we need it is necessary. The tana tzror, if it just had a case of the pebble that was missing, we say mishum delav ba'sakrabahi. This pebble is not, or this piece of earth is not something that could be brought on the altar. Avon melech, the salt, the ba'sakrabahi, the salt. Rashi says after you do the komets on the altar, after komets would go up on the altar, you would salt it. And so therefore, since the salt is something that's supposed to go onto the altar, maybe emat is kosher, maybe it's kosher. Mitana melach, and if we had the case of salt, dilo ikva b'hade mincha meikara, that maybe the salt was not with that mincha from the outset. So therefore, maybe that's why it's disqualifying avolavona, but the case of the frankincense, the ikfa b'hade mincha meikara, that it was with the mincha from the outset. Emat is kosher. Maybe it'll be kosher. Kamashma, we don't say that. In all those cases, since the kometz is missing, it's going to be disqualified. So now the Gemara says, and if the kometz is too much or too little, it's disqualified. Why do we have to say it's disqualified if there's too much or too little or too much? You can have another reason. There is a chatzitza, there's an interposition. The chatzitza is a concept we have when you go to the mikvah. You can't have a chatzitza between you and the water, and there's something that's going to be interposing between you and the flower. So Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah Minatzad. So Rabbi Yirmiyah says that it's basically not directly in between the flower and your hand, but basically it is on the side. Rashi says, "Lamala etzel godo, lamato etzel kamitza." It's either on the top by the thumb, or on the bottom, by the kamitza. And so therefore, it's not a chatzitza because it's on the side. So Rashi says that after you do the kamitza, you turn over your hand. You turn your hand over so that it doesn't fall out. And therefore, the godol and kamitza are both on the side. The thumb and the pinky are both on the side. So then it wouldn't be a kamitza. Then it wouldn't be a chatzitza. Okay, so then the Gemara says, Amarle Abayla Rabba Keitai Komtin. How do you do the kamitza? Amarle, he says, Kidakamti Inchi. He says, like the way people do it. I mean, they do it with all their fingers. They scoop it up with all their fingers. So the Gemara says, well, 1 second. Esve, we have a problem with this. There's a price that says Zu Zeres, Zu Kamitza, O Ama, Zu Ama, Zu Etzba, Zu Godel. So each of the fingers has a measurement, a sacred measurement associated with it. The pinky, which is the Zeres, that's associated with the breastplate of the Kohen. The Kamitza, which is the ring finger, that's associated with the kamitza. The ama is the middle finger associated with the measurement from the elbow to the middle finger. That's the measurement called an ama. And zu etzba, that's where the Kohen would dip his finger in the blood. And zu godel, and then there's the thumb, which is the measurement for the bahonos of the Mitzorah, that when the blood and the oil was placed on the Mitzorah. So each of the fingers has a sacred ritual associated with it. And we could also say, just like each of the fingers, sacred ritual associated with it, each of the body parts has a sacred ritual, has a sacred mission, a sacred responsibility to serve Hashem. But anyways, we see from here the relevant factor for our discussion is that the Kmitza was only done with one of the fingers. So the Gemara says, okay, Ella Hashvos. No, we say that you would scoop it up with all the fingers, and then what would happen was that the ring finger, that the pinky and the thumb would be mashvet. So therefore, all the kamitza is all the fingers are needed to smooth it out. Meaning, to say the kometz is only what's between the ring and the pointer finger or the index finger, but even the pinky and the thumb are needed because it smooths it out. So therefore, the flour will not be heaping and overwhelming those three fingers. So the Gemara says, "Oh, hey, how do you do this kamitza?" That what you do is you stick out three fingers on achamakia apasiado, meaning to say you stick out your three fingers until they come to the back of the palm, the kometz, and you put the flour inside of it. So that's called the kamitza. Now we have a brayso that says this. Hold on, let's see if Rashi says anything. So we have a brayso that says this. I might think the kamitza could be heaping. Tamor bekumtso. So I think maybe just the tips of fingers. Tamor melokumtso. So the fullness of the kamitza. How do you do it? You stick out your three fingers until they reach the palm of the hand, the komplets, and then you do the kamitza in them. And by the flour offering that is baked, either in a pan or a deep pan, and then the bread is crushed up, so some of it is going to be not as fine. So mochek begodol milamao be'etzbo katana milamata. Then you have to smooth it out with your thumb and your pinky. V'zui avoda kashash v'mikdash. That's one of the most difficult. This is the most difficult task in the temple, to make sure that none of it is coming out too far. In which case, it would be disqualified. Where it says zu v'sulo, is this the most difficult? What about the malika malika? What about where the Kohen has to kill the bird with his thumb? That's also difficult. Some say it's because of the pain involved to the Kohen. Some say because he has to make sure to do it properly, not to make it kill it before he slaughters it. The Gemara says, "Va'ika chafina." What about the fact there's chafina, which is where the Kohen Gadol would have to carry the pan of coals in one hand and the spoon of incense in the left hand as he would walk in, and then into the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur, and then he'd have to pour from the spoon into his cupped hands without any of the incense falling off. And that would be a very difficult task. Either had to do with his teeth or from the edge of his fingers, he'd have to hold it. This is one of the most difficult tasks in the temple. I understand when it says to do a kamitza, it's get the kamti inchi. That's like we said, like people do it, meaning to say that he puts his hand on its side, and so therefore he puts his sides of his fingers into the flour until he puts his whole hand in, and then he scoops it up. So by Rav Papa comments Berosh it's possible, meaning say let's say you did it differently. Let's say you just did it straight on. You bent over your fingers until it not from the side. What's the law? Minat studin. What about if you put your hand, the back of your hand on the flour until it enters in from the sides, meaning you did it backwards. So let's say you did it that way. Let's say you did it backwards. What will be the law there? Or else, alternative is maybe different the sides of the utensil. Mimata or mala, meaning to say, let's say you flipped over your hand. What will be the law there? So all these questions, the Gemara says take you. So leave it unresolved. Papa Pshitale, I understand me the little chafnav when it says that the Ketores has to be filled in your palms, that means to say, like people typically do that they put the sides of their hands into the Ketores and bring them close together. So by Rav Papa, Chafen Berashi Etzbosov, let's say it was just the tips of your fingers. Mao, Minat Stadim, what about if it happened from the side? You went sideways in. Or Mao, Chafen Be, let's say you did it Bezu. Let's say you did it each hand separately. The carbon do it, and then you brought them together, Mao Teiko. So again, unresolved. By Rav Papa, Dabke Lekomets B'dafne Demana. Let's say you attached the komets to the walls of the utensil in order to sanctify it. So there's a question about what it means. So what would be the law under that case? Toch, do we say toch klibein, and we need it to be specifically in the utensil, va'ika, and therefore it's now in the utensil. Odelma hanacha bestocha bainan, or we need to put it directly down, and this is not the hanacha leika. So now, last of these questions, that was taken, but by Mar Baravashi, Havchelamana, Vidabkel Komets Barisa Demana. Well, this is a strange thing to imagine, but you get the point. Let's see, he turned over utensil and he attached the komets to the bottom of the utensil on the outside. So there is maybe like a hollow part or a ridge. So what would be the law? Hanacha besocha ba'ina, we need it to be placed in a utensil. Ba'ika udama kitikno ba'ina, or maybe it needs to be done in the normal manner. So v'leikan, it's not. So take it. Gemara leaves it unresolved. Okay, so now up to the next question. So the next Mishnah, Keitzad hu osa, how does he do this avoda of the kamitza? So that to make sure the service of the kamitza, to make sure it's not deficient or too much. So what he does is he puts in the sides of his fingers into the flour and he pushes on the side in the flour, and so therefore the flour will come into his hand, pushing its bust up, and then he stretches out his fingers al pasiado, meaning to say until he touches the back of the hand, and then the flour that's in it will be exact and it will not be missing. And the Gemara says riba shamna or chaser shamna, but let's say put in too much oil or too few oil, or if he doesn't have enough frankincense, pasul, it's disqualified. So the Gemara says, what does it mean? Riba shamna. What does it mean if you put in too much oil? Amar Rabbi Elazar could go into hifresh la shnei lugin. Let's say he separated 2 lugin of oil and he mixed it in with, because you're really supposed to use one lug of oil, and he put in 2 lugs of oil, then it's disqualified. So Gemara says, "V'lukma could go into arba shemen dechulin, v'shemen dechaverta." So Gemara says, why don't we say that it's talking about a case where he mixed in a little bit of non-sacred oil in addition to the shemen of the mincha. So if you say that wouldn't disqualify it, but didn't we say if that's the case, minchas chota the possible shemen hechem mishkachasla? If you have the mincha of the sinner where you're not allowed to put in oil, and we learned that oil disqualifies it, how would it be disqualified? Edi day. If you're going to say it's the oil that's designated for the sinner, there is no oil. And if you were say talking about it, put in the oil of chulin or from a different mincha, so possible, then you just say it's not disqualified. Rabbi Elazar, so the Gemara says Rabbi Elazar is saying, no, that's not what I'm saying. I was saying lomi by, meaning say lomi by chulin lechaverta the pasuk. Not only if it was the oil that was mixed in chulin or a different mincha, is it disqualified? But let's say you put in 2 complete oils, since both of them would have been good on their own, so you might have said that's not disqualified. The other ones, I admit, I'm not sure that's also disqualified. So the Gemara says, Rebbe Elazar. And how does Rebbe Elazar know this law? So Amarava Matnisin Kashise, because this mission is difficult. My area the Tani Riba Shamna. Why does it say if there's too much? If it's too much oil, listen to Riba Shemen. If it should have said why does it say if it had too much of its oil? It should have said too much oil. Meaning to say even if he separated 2 complete lugan for it, it would be disqualified. If it was missing its levona, it's disqualified. Tana Rabbanan Chasar v'amda al koret echad. Let's say the levona was missing, but there was just only one little small kernel of the frankincense. Psula, it's disqualified. Al shnei karatim, but if there's two kernels, it will be ksher. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Shimon Omer al koret echad kshera. He says for one it's kosher, pachos mikan psula, but if it's less than one, it's disqualified. The Gemara says, really? V'atanya, didn't we learn kol mitzvah levona shachasar kol shehu? Also, didn't we learn a kometz and a levona that they're missing any amount is disqualified? And didn't we just say, according to him, it's not disqualified? So the Gemara says, Tani, Kora levona shachatzer kol shu pasal. No, if you have a kora levona and then went missing, then it'll be disqualified. So if the levona came with the mincha, then if it went missing a little bit, it would be kosher according to Rabbi Shimon. But levona that was brought by its own, a person says, I'm going to bring a levona offering, and then he has to bring a full kometz of levona and burn it on the altar. And if it's missing, even any amount of that, it's disqualified. Because with respect to this, we don't say that one koret is sufficient. Our Mishnah, it says if it's missing a levona, it's disqualified. And that means even if it's only missing a little amount, is actually a three-way dispute. Rabbi Meir Savar Kometz Betchil. Rabbi Meir says that the moment of the Kamitza, which is at the beginning of the service, you have to have a Kometz Shoim of Levona, the Kometz Besof, and also when you burn it on the altar, you need to have the Levona needs to be intact. Rabbi Yehuda Savar Kometz Betchila Ushnei Karatim Besof. You need to have a Kometz of Levona at the outset, and then when you burn it, you need only two kernels. Rabbi Shimon said, "Kometz betchila." You need a kometz of levona at the outset, v'koret echad besof, and you need one kernel at the end. So this idea that you need a kometz of the levona when you do the kamitza is agreed to by all the Tanaim. And the Gemara later on is going to learn it out on Daf Vav from the fact that we compare the levona to the harama, meaning to say the kamitza of the mincha. Just like the mincha, its measurement is a kometz, also the levona. And so if you're missing any amount by the kamitza, according to everybody, it's disqualified. Okay, so the Gemara says, this three-way dispute is expounded from the verse. It says, Veskol avona shalom mincha. Rameir savar adi isa avona deikve b'hadi mincha mikar. Rameir says, until there was the lavona that was there at the outset. The Yehuda savar kol vafilu chad koret, even one kernel. And as Rabos koret acher, that's say two kernels. Rabbi Shimon es lo darish. He doesn't expound the word es. The dispute is only about levona that comes with mincha. If you brought the frankincense on its own, they would call kometz betchil or kometz besof. Everybody says you need a kometz at the outset and a kometz in the end. And that's the reason we know why I need to say asher al mincha. That this law about a kometz shonim that's only applies to the levona that's with the mincha, but not to the levona but by itself, where you need the kometz even at the end. It's only the speed about the levona that comes with mincha. Levona above the bezikin, but the levona that comes with the spoons that are with the lechem upon him, with those little saucers, everybody says you need two kamatzim at the beginning and two at the end. Where it says pshita, it's obvious because it doesn't say kol, and so therefore you wouldn't have the idea that you're allowing anything less than two kamatzim. So I might have thought that since it's brought with the bread, it's like kasher al mincha, and it will be okay even with a smaller amount. Kamash more, and so he says no, you need the two full bezikin. One says the dispute is with the lavona that comes with the mincha. So, but the kometz that comes on its own, everybody says you need a kometz at the outset and kometz at the end. And others say it's a dispute in both cases. Okay, that if it was missing the lavona, it's disqualified. So hayater, but if you add on to lavona, ksher, if it's missing, it's disqualified, which implies that if you add on, it's ksher, vatanya. But we have a different price that says yatir, that if you add on, it's psua. We're talking about a case where you separated two kamatzin. So Rabbi Muhammad says if you separate two kamatzim and you lost one of them before the kamitza, lo hukbu. It's not a fact. Achar kamitza, but after the kamitza hukbu, it would be fixed. Let's say you separated four kamatzim for the two bezikin. And you lost two of them before the removal of the bezikin, lo hukbu. It's not fixed, and you can just add extra. After the removal, then hukbu. It's too late to add in. The Gemara says, Hatsu Amalei, I know, it's the same teaching. Why don't they both? The Gemara says, no, Maladatimi might have thought, Kivan Debari or Kometz today, since it's so clear what it is, in the Kometz of the Lavona, it's clear that it's the Bezikin, Kivan Sheigi is Manala Parka, once it came time to remove, Command the Parka dummy. It's like it was already removed. So we don't say that. Kamashma, we don't say that. Okay, this is the law. This is today's daf. Baruch Hashem, thank you for accommodating my schedule. And tomorrow morning we'll also do it at 6:20. Bezras Hashem Yisbarach. I appreciate your patience. Yashakoach.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.